I'm not the type to overthink small things. But when I got a text from my mother-in-law, I had a bad feeling. Emily, the whole family will be having dinner at my house tonight. There's something important we need to discuss. Be on time. I stared at my phone, my fingers hesitating over the keyboard. In the 6 years I had been a part of the Carter family, I had never received such a formal message from Susan. This family wasn't the type to hold serious meetings. They preferred to do things on a whim, especially when it came to money. Jake, my husband, was sitting on the couch, laptop on his lap, eyes glued to the screen as if I didn't exist. I cleared my throat. Do you know what your mom wants to talk about tonight? He froze for a second, then shook his head. No. But just go. If Mom said it's important, I'm sure it's nothing. I doubted that. Jake was never good at hiding things. But I had no proof to push further. I just knew that whatever was waiting for me at my mother-in-law's house tonight, I wasn't going to like it. By the time I arrived, the sun had just set. The 2-story house sat in a quiet suburban neighborhood in Austin, the front lawn neatly trimmed. A familiar SUV was parked outside, Ryan's car. Jake's younger brother. The moment I stepped inside, I knew something was off. Everyone was already there. Jake sat at the head of the table, next to his mother, Susan. Ryan and his wife, Megan, were across from each other. The dining table was bare. No food, just a stack of documents. My stomach tightened. Susan gave me a smile, calculated and cold. Emily, you're here. Have a seat. We have something to discuss. Reluctantly, I pulled out a chair, my eyes scanning the room. Jake avoided my gaze. Ryan looked unusually excited. Megan had her arms crossed, as if she were waiting for a dramatic show to unfold. Susan cleared her throat. Tonight, we're going to vote on whether Emily should help the family by lending Ryan and Megan $50,000 for their new house. The room froze. I blinked, trying to process what I had just heard. Excuse me, what? Ryan grinned. You heard right. We want to buy a house, but our savings aren't enough. Mom said you could help, so we figured the fairest way to decide was a democratic vote. I turned to Jake, waiting for him to speak up. But he just stared at the table, gripping the spoon in front of him like it was the only thing holding him together. Anger boiled inside me. Are you serious? I'm not a bank. And no one gets to vote on my money. Susan feigned surprise, as if I had just said something completely unreasonable. But you're part of this family. Families help each other, don't they? Megan scoffed. It's weird, really. You make so much money, but you don't want to share. Don't you think that's a little selfish? I clenched my jaw. I work hard for my money. No one has the right to force me to give it away just because of family. Susan clapped her hands together. Well then, let's vote. I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw everyone, including Jake, raise their hands in agreement. My heart turned ice cold. I looked at my husband. You too. Jake didn't answer right away. 1 second. 2 seconds. Then slowly he nodded, still not meeting my gaze. Rage exploded inside me like a storm. I could no longer hold back. I took a deep breath, then smiled. All right. Then let's also vote on whether I should divorce Jake. The room went dead silent. Ryan's mouth fell open. Megan choked on her drink. Susan stared at me like I had just said something utterly horrifying. Jake panicked. Emily, don't joke like that. I shrugged. Who said I'm joking? If you all have the right to vote on my money, then I should have the right to vote on my marriage. I met his eyes, unwavering. What do you say, Jake? Are you voting to keep this marriage? Jake said nothing. No one said anything. I pushed my chair back and stood. Looks like I'm the only one here capable of thinking rationally. I'm not lending anyone $50,000. And as for this marriage, we'll talk later. Without another glance, I turned and walked out. The cold night air hit me as I opened my car door, but I felt nothing. My entire world had just collapsed. And I realized it was time to take control of my own fate. I sat in the car, gripping the steering wheel tightly, my heart still pounding after the chaotic dinner. My own words, "Maybe we should take a vote on whether I should divorce Jake," kept echoing in my head. The stunned faces around the table, especially Jake's bewildered expression, only confirmed what I already knew. I was no longer a woman who could be controlled. Looking back, I realized the warning signs in my marriage weren't new. From the moment I married Jake, his family had treated me like an endless source of money. They never asked, only demanded, and expected me to comply. If I refused, I was labeled selfish. The first time it happened was 6 months into our marriage. Susan, my mother-in-law, called with an urgent tone. "Emily, can you help me? Ryan needs a little money to pay off a debt. Just $5,000. Surely you can help him, right?" At the time, I didn't think much of it. I could help, so I did. I transferred the money immediately. But then, 3 months later, another call came. "Megan wants to enroll in a baking class. You know how important this is to her, but the tuition is quite high. Could you help out a little?" I had started feeling uncomfortable, but I still agreed. Yet when I asked about the money I had given before, Susan just chuckled dismissively. "Oh, honey, don't think too much about it. We're family." Jake never defended me in these situations. When I told him I felt taken advantage of, he just shrugged. "They're my family. This is normal." But no, it wasn't normal. It was exploitation. I had once given Ryan an even larger sum, $10,000, hoping he'd get back on his feet. But 3 months later, that money was gone. Ryan still had no job, still lived off his mother, and had no intention of paying me back. When I asked, he gave me a sheepish smile. "Oh sis, that money's already been used up. But don't worry, I'll pay you back when I can." I turned to Jake, expecting him to make his brother keep his promise. But he just placed a soothing hand on my shoulder and said, "Babe, it's just money. Don't make a big deal out of it." And that was the moment I realized I hadn't just married Jake. I had married an entire family that didn't understand the concept of gratitude. Tonight wasn't just another request for money. It was the breaking point. I had just been promoted to regional financial director. I had worked tirelessly for 8 years to reach this position, overcoming countless obstacles and fierce competition. I deserved every bit of my success. I had also received a substantial bonus, $50,000, a sum I intended to invest in my own future, not for people who had never appreciated my hard work. But more than the money, I had realized something far more important. I didn't want to be in this marriage anymore. I couldn't stay with a man who always prioritized his family over his wife, who remained silent while I was being used, who left me to fight battles alone when we should have faced them together. Tonight's dinner was a clear reminder that I needed to escape this life, a life where I had to constantly fight for respect. And I knew exactly what I needed to do next. I looked around the dinner table, where all eyes were locked on me. Susan was sobbing, tears streaming down her face, but I felt no sympathy anymore. "You're my daughter-in-law. It's your duty to help the family," she cried, her voice full of accusation. Ryan crossed his arms, glaring at me. "You're rich and stingy as hell. Someone who makes hundreds of thousands a year is complaining about $50,000. I felt heat rise in my chest. "Rich? You think I'm rich? I work my ass off every single day to earn this money while you sit around all year without even trying to get a job." Megan sneered, her tone dripping with disdain. "You're just a selfish woman who refuses to support her husband's family. If Jake married you and you can't even help his family, what's the point of you?" Jake, still keeping up his facade of calm, placed a hand on my shoulder as if trying to pacify me. "Babe, this isn't worth fighting over. We're family. Helping each other out isn't a big deal." I pushed his hand away and met his gaze head-on. "Family? What kind of family only thinks about my money? Jake, have you ever stood up for me? Do you remember when I lent Ryan $10,000 2 years ago? And that money vanished without a trace. Ryan avoided my gaze, but Susan quickly jumped in. But the family was struggling at the time. You can't hold that against us. I let out a laugh, cold and sharp, even to my own ears. Struggling? Ryan doesn't have a job because he refuses to work, not because he can't. And Megan flaunts designer bags and goes to the spa every week, yet she still expects me to give her more? And Jake, do you think I don't know? Jake hesitated. What are you talking about? I pulled out my phone, opened my banking app, and held the screen up to him. You withdrew $10,000 from our joint account 2 weeks ago and transferred it straight to Ryan. Did you think I wouldn't notice? The room went dead silent. Jake's face drained of color, while Susan, Ryan, and Megan all stared in shock. You betrayed me, I said, my voice trembling with fury. Not just emotionally, but financially. You stole from me. You gave away my money without saying a word. Jake stammered. I just thought. You thought what? That I'd never find out? That I'd be stupid enough to keep tolerating this? I took a deep breath, meeting each pair of eyes in the room. I'm done with all of this. And I won't let it continue any longer. I'm filing for divorce. Jake paled. Emily, you can't do this. We can talk. We can fix this. I shook my head. No, Jake. This is beyond fixing. You broke my trust. And I can't live with a man who doesn't respect me, doesn't protect me, and only sees me as an endless wallet. Susan sobbed louder, while Megan shot a worried glance at Ryan. They understood that I was serious. I stood up, grabbed my purse. This dinner is over. And so is my marriage. Turning my back, I walked to the door, leaving behind stunned faces and a room filled with tense silence. I sat on my bed, the glow from my laptop screen casting shadows on my tired face. I had just finished a call with a top divorce and finance lawyer. Before I had hesitated, but now I had no other choice. Jake and his family wouldn't get another dime from me. I had frozen our joint accounts, separated all my assets under my name, and secretly rented a new apartment on the other side of the city. I planned to leave on a night when no one would expect it. If Jake could betray me so blatantly, I owed him nothing, not even a warning. At home, I acted normal, pretending everything was the same. Jake tried to make amends, acted remorseful, but I no longer believed his lies. I was no longer the woman who forgave a traitor. I was preparing for my new life, one without Jake and his toxic family. The day to leave had arrived. I packed my bags into the trunk, double-checked my documents, bank accounts, and everything else I needed. Just as I opened the door to step out, Jake appeared, his face filled with confusion and panic. "Where are you going?" he asked, his voice trembling. I met his gaze, and for the first time in years, I felt completely in control. "Away." He grabbed my arm. "Emily, please. We can talk. I know I messed up. I can change. Just give me one more chance." I yanked my arm free. "You had more than enough chances, Jake. And what did you do with them? You betrayed me. You used me. There won't be another chance." Before he could say more, a car horn blared. It was Susan and Ryan. They stepped out, their faces filled with rage. "You think you can just walk away?" Ryan growled, his eyes bloodshot as he stormed toward me. Susan folded her arms. "You've taken enough from our family. You owe us. If you leave, you have to compensate Jake emotionally. At least $50,000. I laughed. Emotional compensation? For what? For refusing to let you leech off me any longer. Ryan slammed his fist against my car door. "You selfish bitch. You have money, but you won't help at all." Calmly, I pulled out my phone and pressed record. "Thank you, Ryan. I'll be sending this to my lawyer." And if you damage my car any further, I'll call the cops right now. Ryan hesitated, but Susan kept yelling. You'll regret this, Emily. You'll see how hard life is without family. I looked at her coldly. I've lived with this family for too long. Trust me, life without you can only get better. With that, I turned, got into my car, and slammed the door shut. As I started the engine, Ryan stood there, glaring, but he didn't dare do anything more. Only when I drove away did I finally feel free. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew one thing for sure. I was taking back control of my life. I officially filed for divorce on Monday morning. The next day, Jake received the papers from my lawyer. He called me non-stop, leaving dozens of frantic messages. But I had nothing left to say. For the first time in years, I felt relieved. No more dealing with Jake's manipulation, no more enduring Susan's judgmental glares, and no more unreasonable demands from Ryan and Megan. It was over. But Jake didn't give up easily. He showed up at my office, waiting outside, looking disheveled and lost. Emily, I'm sorry. Can we talk? I looked at him, calmer than ever. We've talked enough. It's over, Jake. But I love you. I was wrong. I'll change. I shook my head. If you truly loved me, you wouldn't have let your family take advantage of me. If you truly loved me, you would have stood by my side. Jake lowered his head, unable to argue. I walked past him without looking back. Not long after, Ryan and Megan were kicked out of Susan's house. With no money and no one left to rely on, they quickly spiraled into financial ruin. Ryan even called me, begging for help. I simply laughed and hung up. Susan wasn't any better off. Without my financial support, she finally faced the consequences of a lifetime of mooching off others. But I no longer cared. I decided to share my story on Reddit. I didn't expect much, just a way to vent about everything I had been through. But the story spread quickly. Thousands of people supported me, empathized with me, and even shared their own similar experiences. Jake tried to reach out again after my post went viral. But this time, I had blocked him completely. There was nothing left to say, nothing left to salvage. Ryan, the one who constantly demanded money from me, eventually got sued for unpaid debts. Megan left him soon after. I guess she didn't want to go down with a sinking ship. I started over. A new apartment, a new life. I learned to set boundaries, to say no without guilt. I was no longer anyone's prey. Looking back, I once thought I had a family. But in reality, they were just a flock of vultures. And I was no longer their meal. Hashtag lessons from this story. Marriage isn't just about love. It's about trust, respect, and protection. If someone won't stand by your side when you're under attack, they're not truly your partner. In-laws aren't always real family, especially if they see you as a resource rather than a person of value. Legal and financial awareness is crucial in marriage. Having a prenuptial agreement, maintaining personal assets, and managing finances transparently can save you from situations like this. When betrayed, outthink them, don't just out-argue them. The protagonist didn't just get angry, she planned carefully to ensure she came out victorious.